Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of the Mary Trump Show Strategy Sessions. There are 105 days until the 2020 midterm elections, the most consequential elections of our lifetime. This is not hyperbole. And today I am going to be speaking with my awesome Nerd Avengers, with special guest Tara Setmeyer and potential future Nerd Avenger, about the state of play when it comes to both sidesing everything and the disadvantages that puts Democrats at, the advantages it puts Republicans at. And our other special guest, Olivia Troy, just joining us, and Waj is here. Everybody, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. And again, today we're focusing on the dangers that persist when it comes to this. It's almost a compulsion at this point to pretend that both parties are the same, that if you criticize one, you have to criticize the other. I saw this, Waj, you've been talking about this on Twitter a lot, but I saw somebody, I'm sorry I'm not crediting the person, but I honestly don't remember who it was. But essentially the tweet was, on a Saturday, Republicans are burning books. They're forcing 10-year-old rape victims to carry their babies to term, and they're flying swastikas. And on Sundays, the Sunday alleged news programs talk about high gas prices and inflation. So this is a dangerous state of affairs because it's deeply misleading, and it gives people the impression that we are living in normal political times. And for people who don't have the capacity to pay attention to too much, for people who really are suffering because of inflation and high gas prices, it's difficult to see beyond that without making a concerted effort, which quite honestly, a lot of people don't understand they need to make. They figure, okay, the news is supposed to keep me abreast of everything that's happening and explain things to me. And they're being failed at every turn.
Yeah, so what happens is oftentimes in the media landscape, I've been in this game for a long time. I can tell you, and others who've been working in this field can tell you, is that many of the producers and journalists are just trained. It's almost like Pavlovian response. If I gave 6 minutes to Rick Santorum, I have to give 6 minutes to Mary Trump. If I gave 4.5 minutes to Brian, I have to give 4.5 minutes to Gorka.
By the way, just quick, I never want to hear my name in the same sentence with Rick Santorum.
I just wanted to see the gag reflex. I just wanted to see.
Is he joining us? Is he joining us next, Mary?
Well, I have to give him equal time according to Waj. So yes,
joining us.
Mary, be glad that it's just your name in a sentence and not sitting next to him like I had to on CNN panels.
Yeah,
for
Tara
years.
and I had to do that many times.
And on Bill Maher's show, where I ripped him such a new asshole that he didn't speak to me for years at CNN. He was so upset.
You say as if that's a bad thing.
Oh, I wear it with a badge of valor.
Didn't legislate against new assholes? I think in the past that's a problem, right?
I just wanted to see Mary like dry hack a little bit on live TV.
You just hurt my feelings.
So this is just, just to connect the dots. That for those who are listening, that's how it works behind the scenes. It's like this almost Pavlovian need, and they're trained. It's like very difficult to untrain them, to unstick this, and the fear of being perceived as unbiased and unfair is more detrimental to them than actually unintentionally harming democracy. Which is why these platforms, these mainstream platforms, give a column or like say Rick Santorum got a huge deal at CNN because they feel like, okay, if we bring them on, then at least we will appear to be fair and balanced. And then also, this is important, is they desperately want to placate the right wing that calls them pedophiles. I'm going to say this again. They want to placate the right wing that calls them pedophiles and the enemy of the state. So like if we give Hugh Hewitt a column at Washington Post where he can run disinformation, or if we give Rick Santorum a platform where Tara will say this, we used to go in there for like a 7-minute conversation. 3.5 minutes of the conversation is derailed, just us like debunking the talking points. The devastating effect of this, and that you could see it on two issues in particular, climate change and also when it comes to vaccines, is that when you do create this both sides false equivalence, instead of you being fair and balanced, you normalize and mainstream the harmful position, which is why, like you were saying, Mary, when the average Jose watches, they're like, oh, 99% of scientists say climate change is real and 1% says wrong, but they had 6 minutes for both sides. And the data shows is that what happens is that actually mainstreamed climate change denialism. It mainstreamed vaccine disinformation. So connecting it to our point right now is you have two political parties, one that is so radicalized and weaponized that, as you said, 96% of the people in the House voted against the right to birth control in 2022. A majority of Republicans are for the big lie. They're literally sabotaging school boards, medical boards, state legislatures. Now they're trying to get the sheriffs. There's nothing comparable. And yet this desire to create a both sides false equivalence then says, look, we have to hit Biden. Inflation. Oh, we have to hit Biden. Oh, look, he's weak here. Oh, but meanwhile, look at the 95 things the Republicans are doing. They're actually attacking democracy. And with a lack of context, what happens is, and we've talked about this on your show before, most people go to the polls and they say the following. Well, both sides are extreme. Ilhan Omar wears hijab and tweeted something. And then there's Rick Santorum. I'm going to wash my hands and just go with the Republican. And this is why I believe those in media are failing the moment. And it's more insidious than that. The last thing I'll say is, you saw with the CBS president, the memo that was leaked. Yeah. He said, like, listen, I think Republicans are going to win in the midterms. We need to get access. So in order to get access, let's hire Mick Mulvaney and give him a 6-figure deal. ABC News did that with Chris Christie. Meanwhile, show me the left-wing or liberal equivalent of a Rick Santorum, a Mick Mulvaney. They do not exist.
It's me. Yeah. Me.
Even Dean, but Dean's a sober, sane person.
Is he though? No, seriously.
I'm not.
No, but Dean, it's such a good point.
You can't have two Muslims go back to back. That's against the rules.
But this has been another tool, I guess, that they've had. That again, they borrow wholesale from Republicans by equating the far left and the far right, or in order to demonize the left, which, by the way, I don't know anybody who's far left, by the way. Not one person, not one elected Democrat, as far as I'm aware, is so-called far left. So they demonize which is basically the base. They equate the left base with far left, and yet they equate the Republican base, which is the far right, with just a normal base, right?
The regular folks out here in Ohio diners. That's what they are.
Say that again?
The regular folks out here in Ohio diners.
Yes, which I think the New York Times needs to do another feature about, quite honestly.
I'd like to show them around Ohio next time they come.
White guys in diners in the Midwest have not had their voices amplified enough. I just want to read you some recent votes that have occurred in the House, and this is to Waj's point, because I think the things are connected. We normalize extreme behavior on the right, which leads to which has legislative implications. So the Respect for Marriage Act, and by the way, these are bills that passed in the House of Representatives led by the Democrats. These are not, it's not, the House didn't pass them, the Democrats in the House passed them. So that's another, the framing is also important, but we never hear it framed that way. So the Respect of Marriage Act protects same-sex marriage, but also, because apparently this is a thing that needs to happen in 2022, interracial marriage. Oh my God. 157 Republicans voted against that. We have an Actor Shooter Alert Act, which is like the Amber Alert system for abducted children. It literally is simply put in place to alert people if there's an active shooter in their neighborhood, right? 168 Republicans voted against that. The Right to Contraceptive Act, which literally just allows people access to birth control without government interference. 195 Republicans voted against that. And finally, the National Defense Authorization Act, which is simply requiring the Pentagon and other federal law enforcement agencies to report on efforts to counter white supremacists and neo-Nazis in their ranks. 205 Republicans voted against needing to alert us to whether or not there's white supremacy and neo-Nazis in the federal government.
Mary,
So-
that was every single Republican, by the way.
Yeah,
Not a
Yes,
single
the
Republican.
last one was every single Republican who voted. A couple didn't show up. But I think it's very important to look at this in terms of legislation, because let's be real. Those Republican numbers, with the exception of the last one, because they can't really get much higher unless there are more Republicans in the House, those numbers are going to get bigger as Republicans like Cheney and Kinzinger are forced out, and especially if the Republicans take over the majority in the House. So, Dean.
Me.
Yes, because I think, you're the
Oh,
problem.
this is
here.
exciting. All right, I am.
No,
Go ahead. Here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line for everyone. The corporate media is not our friend. Okay, the corporate media is not our friend. It's not our enemy. It's a vessel to make money. I don't know why people don't get it. It is about revenue. They are publicly traded corporations. Les Moonves famously said in 2016, Donald Trump's not good for America, but he's good for us. People say, people talk about the media like, oh, this mystical thing. Would you debate me that pharmaceutical companies, their bottom lines about making money, or insurance companies? No, you wouldn't. I think it's the delusion that we have that the journalists are supposed to be some noble pursuit. I think individual journalists are great. But when you work in the corporate world, even our friends who are great in the corporate world, work in a structure where the top are executives. And the top, some might want balance, but some don't want higher taxes because they're wealthy. That is part of it. I think there's a sinister element to this. Not really sinister as much as just honest. The media, the big executives don't want to pay higher taxes. That's part of it. The two sides, I mean, look, they know Edward R. Murrow famously said there are not two sides to every issue. I didn't go to journalism school. They did. They know that. So this idea that there's two sides, no, this is by design. Look at the framing on the vote on marriage equality. It's like 47 Republicans voted for it. That was a headline. 47 Republicans vote for marriage equality, as opposed to 3/4 of Republicans vote against it. It is framing. And the media has an agenda, whatever it might be. But at the bottom line, look at it as a business. Look at it. They will cover drama over democracy. That's what they're about. So if Democrats and us and Americans who believe in democracy want to navigate in that world, we have to come up with ideas that work in that world, or go around them. Go around them like somebody's uncle did on this panel by using Twitter to go directly to the people and have it amplified, using ways around it, because we're going to scream all day about the media like we scream about how Democrats are ineffective at messaging. It's the same argument. We have it all the time. So at 105 days out, let's each of us be ambassadors to go out there and tell the story ourselves. Tell your coworkers, your friends, share it on social media. Don't wait for them. We are the leaders we've been waiting for. To wait for them at this point is a joke. It's a fool's errand. It is insanity defined. So get out there. You can do it. We can do it. We can all play a role. 105 days. That's my TED Talk. Thanks, folks. See you later.
I swear, you and Waj are always giving TED Talks here. This is, just in case you're unaware, this is not TED.
What?
That.
My agent told me this was a
Were
TED
you misled?
Talk.
I'm so sorry. Brian and Cliff, I know you have something to say, but I want to jump to Tara first, because first of all, I've been saying this for a long time. I'm sure all of you have said some version of this. The media need to be neutral as to the facts, but they also need to be pro-democracy, because there is no free and fair press without a thriving democracy. So Tara, we've seen, we just talked briefly about these legislative horrors that, luckily these things passed. They'll probably, who knows what's going to happen in the Senate. But again, it's not that they passed, it's how close they came not passing, because, the Republicans are almost a monolith at this point. Did you, as somebody who was in the party and then has become one of the most eloquent critics of the party, is this the kind of trajectory you imagined? I recently spoke to Tim Miller. I've been reading his book, and he kind of makes it clear that, a lot of you who were relatively moderate Republicans back in the day were just kind of, going along to get along because you believed in certain Republican principles, and the rest was just kind of on the fringes. So does this evolution, if you want to call it that, make sense? And to what extent should we be alarmed?
Well, I had the pleasure of reading Tim's book and interviewing him as well on Sirius XM a few weeks ago, and it felt very personal for me. because the way he lost friends and kind of was looking around going like, what happened here? I've gone through that. So it was very cathartic for me. Where we're a little different is that he was more of a kind of like the hitman behind the scenes, the hired gun for contract. And I was more in the comms policy side of things, working on the Hill. So I didn't, I did campaigns early on, but not at the level that he did and the kind of the dirt that he did, that he is copped to and admitted and reconciled with. And Tim is great. And I'm glad we're all on the same side, because it's important for people to have that self-reflection, because oftentimes some of my best friends were still best friends to this day. We worked on Capitol Hill together, and they did not go to the dark side. And we talk almost every day, kvetching about, was it always like this? Were we part of this? Wait, were they always this batshit crazy? Like, or did we just not know? And we kind of look back and we see where we were just, when you're caught up in it, sometimes you don't recognize how bad it is. But what I will say is that I did start to notice and start to diverge from kind of the party apparatus and realizing that the party's not going in a great direction with the Tea Party. It was the Tea Party, revolution, evolution, devolution, that really started me opening my eyes and going, well, I don't really agree with this, and their tactics, their language, and the way that the Tea Party members came in. And what they were doing, they really weren't interested in legislating. They were more interested in creating chaos and just getting their points across. And then social media became a thing. And then now we see this new crop of Republicans. They have no principles. The party has no platform. It's not about public policy anymore. And it used to, at least legitimately back in the day when I was around, it was about tax cuts. It was about smaller government. It was about the deficit. It was about national security. I mean, we could argue those policy differences. That doesn't exist now. It's all about, quote, owning the libs. And that is horrible. And that's how we've seen that this emotional appeal to the cult of personality has turned into this neo-fascist, authoritarian, undemocratic, illiberal movement on the side of the Republican Party that was once the proud, shining city on the hill, mantle, Reagan Republicans and Party of Lincoln. That party is dead and gone. So when we look at some of these legislative efforts that Republicans are engaged in, it has nothing to do with what's good for the country. It has to do with whether they can placate their rabid base and get reelected. Lindsey Graham admits this right out in the public. He's unashamed about it. Look, if you don't want to get reelected, you're in the wrong business. And unfortunately for a lot of these people, it's about getting reelected. It's not about protecting our democracy. And I don't think that we've seen our democracy on the knife's edge like this since the Civil War. And I don't know what it's going to take to wake Americans up to that fact.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we need to get everything you just said on a bumper sticker somehow. I don't know how. But you're right. I mean, I want to get back to, I know Brian has something to say about Dean's comment, but I do want to get back to the heart of what you just said, Tara. Yeah, right. And Tara's now. And just also remind people that there are civil servants who understand that their job is to serve, not to get reelected. People like Reps Luria and Cheney, a Democrat and a Republican, whose reelection bids are in danger because they have decided that fighting for democracy is more important than keeping whatever power somebody in the House of Representatives have. Brian.
Well, first of all, let me start with Tara. The Republican Party has never been about small government unless it was small social services. It was always about putting as much money as possible in the military. And as far as Ronald Reagan goes, he created this mess, and he's the devil in the cupboard that came out and killed us all. So I don't want to hear.
We can argue about that later, Brian. I wish we could go back to those arguments.
Ronald Reagan was the first vote I ever cast was against him. He is
Me too.
He caused the biggest problem. He brought us Donald.
Okay, Brian, we're in the present.
Right, so,
yes.
So there is,
was never a threat to democracy.
I love President Reagan. Come on, guys.
Wasn't ever a threat to
Hold on a second. Just first of all,
I hear he's doing great things these days.
Hold on. Going back to what Dina White said, real quick. There's no such thing as objectivity in journalism. Don't pretend there is. There's only subjectivity and fairness and accuracy. We don't do it. And Dean, you're absolutely right. It is about money. Everything else is just a symptom of the problem. These people are not trained, they're paid. And everything that major media does is to create and foster drama. So we see the reemergence of Mick Mulvaney. It's like he's gone through the witness protection program, and now he's out here. He was the worst guy in the world when he was in the White House. I thought he was always trying to sell me a used car. He looked like Herb Tarlick from WKRP in Cincinnati. I thought he was going to come out in white shoes and a burlap sack. These people now have been reinvented as some kind of masters of politics, and they're not. And it's all about money. So at the end of the day, I just want to say, Mary, to what you said, I hope the people in the Senate and the House remember Loving versus Virginia, especially, there's a certain Jenny Thomas and her husband, Clarence, when they start talking about, racial marriage, interracial marriage. But if you're going to change anything and to make a difference, like Dean said, you got to get out and preach it. But more importantly, for the media, you're dealing with people who don't know. These are young kids, many times, the reporters who don't know. They have no background. They don't know how to source information. They don't know how to talk to a source. They don't know how to go into a city hall and get information that they need for a story. So you've got to bypass them. And the managers, it's not so much that they don't want to pay taxes. It's that they want to make money. So they're going to create the environment to generate as much cash as possible. And until you return the guardrails to journalism, this is going to always be a big problem. We've talked about that before.
Right. But we can't do that in the next 105 days. And I don't think anybody in this group, as awesome as my Nerd Avengers are, has that particular superpower. If only we did. Right. Cliff, I want to go to Olivia first, and then we'll come to you. But Olivia, tough crowd. I think this is not the right place to have a conversation about Ronald Reagan. So let's stay. Let's stay in the present.
I'm also going to shock Brian and say, hey, as bad as Mick Mulvaney was, I have to say I was there for the transition and walked Mark Meadows. And let me tell you,
I was there too. You're right.
Yeah.
Much
exponentially, it went downhill. So.
But Olivia, as somebody who was there in a way none of us was.
You can laugh at that. I'm still suffering from the PTSD.
No,
I'm still going to therapy.
I mean, I don't think there's anybody. Well, I don't know if everybody, but Brian, I know for sure. I for sure. Yes, we have PTSD. I mean, mine's not because of this, but it was exacerbated by all of this. That's for damn sure. So, you saw very up close a lot of this unfold. Did it make sense? Like, was there a logical progression to the insanity, if I could even say that? I know that sounds weird, but like, did it make sense that, okay, I get why that person is changing. I understand why that person is abdicating all responsibility and has decided to stay on the side of power versus doing good? Or was it just suddenly you found yourself in a nightmare in which nothing made sense?
No, I think it was insanity from the get-go. I think you saw sort of like, you saw the rhetoric on the campaign trail, right? And that was concerning. And I think, and I will take full responsibility for this. I did not appreciate the anti-immigrant rhetoric. I am Mexican. I found it completely disgusting and offensive when Donald Trump was running for office in 2016 in that cycle. But I also hoped that once he got into office, that would change. I didn't necessarily believe it, but I wanted to hope that he would eventually become presidential. And instead, what ended up happening is that he issued, the travel restrictions, the travel ban, as it really is called, right out of the gate. And I think that was right away the sign that this was the way it was going to go. And I think to what you're saying, I saw people around me change. I saw good people, that I knew who had integrity along the way, who were sensible Republicans, I would say, that were serving in the administration, who were there, I think, as part of a coalition that really wanted to make a difference and thought that they were trying to do the right thing and maybe they could control some of it. But the problem is that the majority of the people that I was surrounded by, I really saw a shift in them. And that was what became increasingly concerning, was that when you're in the circle of power, sure, you know how this is, palace intrigue, and it's real. And you see people kind of start to, they'll bend on this rule, or they'll start to push the envelope in other meetings. And look, I've sat in numerous meetings, I won't get into it, that would probably give you all nightmares, that were very upsetting.
We already have nightmares. Come on.
I was in, I heard the conversations on child separation. Very, very hard when you hear some of these people, the way they speak about things firsthand. They don't hide. I mean, they'll say it straight out in meetings. Those events in national security, I will say at times, like, would exchange books, and afterwards, I'm not gonna lie, there were gatherings and private rooms saying, what just happened? Did you hear that? And what happens next? Which is why it gets to why you were seeing the development of the Schedule F that you've seen reported in Axios and whatever. It's all very real.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Thank you for flagging it. We are going to get to that, because that is the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah, it's alarming.
Yeah, it's very alarming. Cliff, you had an anecdote, or
and I've talked about this here and there, and not a ton, but if you ever want to know sort of the truth, and when it's sort of hitting you in the face and right in front of you. So around 2005, 6, 7, 8, I used to go on MSNBC regularly, right, and participate in those debates back then. And that was back when Tucker Carlson had a show, right, and Alan Keyes had a show, and it was a network that didn't know what it was doing. It was sort of going in all directions. And at one point, I mean, just to give you an idea of how ingrained this is, and I think some of this is from the fact that it is a business and it's the monopolistic nature. And we used to have 60 media companies. I mean, I'm not saying anything anybody else hasn't said there, but one day, at some point I stopped getting invited on, and, I was literally told by a host whose name you all know, but that part I can't go into, who was like, "You've been banned." And the reason I was banned is because I was saying mean things to Republicans. Kellyanne Conway, who nobody knew who she was back then, and Brad Blakeman, if you know who that chump is. And these guys were going and crying about me because because there were roles that were expected to be played. And I'm no good at that, right? Like, there's some things I can do, but I'm too much of an asshole to go on TV and sit there and listen to somebody say things.
I love you, Cliff.
Thank you. That are lies and that are attacks on vulnerable people, and sit there and let these people get away with it. So I would do what I thought normal people would do, and I would just rip them apart and go into all their hypocrisy, and for that, for a couple of years before MSNBC started moving in a more actual left direction, I couldn't be invited on, even though the Republicans could come on and say whatever they wanted to say. And again, that's like publisher, and the ownership bias, because again, taxes, we've talked about this, they want their taxes lowered. A lot of them are conservative. It's about being stuck in that both sides mentality and sort of, please don't hurt me, conservatives, who will call them pedophiles or leftists, or, and one other thing, I mean, I had a bunch of things I wanted to say, but obviously our discussion has changed a bit. I had spent a year being a paid analyst at the Sinclair Broadcast Network going on here, which was hilariously fun, because I like arguing with three Republicans, because I'm just that kind of, talk to my psychiatrist. So, and the difference was, though, how open it was there. While at MSNBC, they would be like, you can't be that mean. I mean, the open, like Armstrong Williams, all that stuff that came out of him.
Sorry. That guy. Oh, I
saw it all in front, all the in front of me, because he was the main guy I debated. I also debated the host, but I saw them, the Smith brothers who owned Sinclair, sending him a limo, and and doing all these things. I was like, freaking, there wasn't Uber. I was probably driving a 50-year-old car up there, to get to the Baltimore headquarters. They're sending a limo with balloons in it for him, and all this other stuff. And I mean, my point to you is, you could see it very clearly back then. And we had a chance on the left. I've never understood this. Murdoch invested in Fox and lost, I don't know how much money over how many years before he started making money. We had the folks on the left to get this, that the mainstream media is there to make money. There's both sides pressures. I think somebody brought this up. I don't know if it was Dean or Brian, that so many folks are now coming from an upper middle class background. I mean, I may live in Cincinnati now, but I grew up in New York City, and I'm sorry, I went to obnoxious private schools. I'm sorry, I'm just going to call it out because I don't care anymore. I babysat Nick Confessori, okay? He was the building.
Wait, so is it your fault?
It's my fault, yes. It was definitely.
Did you go to collegiate?
What'd you say?
Did you go to collegiate? What school?
I went to Horace Mann.
Oh my God. I almost went there.
I used to sled down hills with David Leonhardt. And I'm going to give you the worst one of all. It's going to make you all throw up, which is I went to parties where Alex Berenson, was there. I mean, I know, I know these guys. Some of them have fallen into the both sides model and just kiss ass because that's what they're expected to do. I know behind the scenes, Leonhardt and Confessori are liberal, but this is the box they're stuck in, and they don't care. It's about careerism, right? And then Alex Berenson's a whole different ball of wax. He's an insane person. So you just have to understand the way all this stuff works. I'm glad Dean is on like the left side on Sirius. I'm not saying we have no infrastructure. We've got Mary's show right here. We all do some things, but man, we never did anything to counter everything they've done on the right. We just thought, oh, the mainstream media will cover it. And for a million reasons I just gave you, they will not.
Right. Okay? And exactly. They won't. And we're dealing with a fallout of that. So we need to figure out, I mean, today mostly is, understanding the foundation of why we're here, but helping people understand what the fallout of all of that was and continues to be. So I want to shift gears a little bit and get back to something that Olivia brought up, Jen. Schedule 5, but let's back up a second and also talk about Moore v. Harper. I'm gonna summarize this as quickly and succinctly as I can, and then as you're a lawyer, you're going to correct me. But I want you to speak to both Moore v. Harper and Schedule 5. So Moore v. Harper is a case that the Supreme Court agreed to take up at the end of its last session. So basically, the plaintiffs in the case claimed that the North Carolina Supreme Court does not have the authority to overturn the state legislature's gerrymandered congressional maps, which give Republicans an overwhelming and unfair advantage. So the plaintiffs are relying on something called the independent state legislature doctrine, which is total bullshit, by the way. And this posits that state courts don't have the authority to overrule anti-democratic state laws that are passed by the legislature, which is a huge problem when the state legislature is heavily gerrymandered in a Republican's favor, like in North Carolina and Michigan, for example. So in a layperson's terms, this doctrine is insane. And if SCOTUS decides this case in favor of the plaintiffs, which we know it will, this could be one of the gravest threats to democracy we've yet faced, which will set up a situation in which the next presidential administration, if it's a Republican one, will enact Schedule 5. So, Jen, did I get that right? Ish? You're muted. Jen, you're muted. You've been muted the whole time.
Out, and I'm wondering whether you want me to respond to what you said line by line.
No,
or you want
to however you want.
However you want to ask me a question more about Moore v. Harper.
You can take it however. You're the expert, not me. So whatever you think is most relevant to the conversation.
Well, if we can step back to the bigger frame, which I think the topic today is the unfair advantage that Republicans seem to have, right? Is that kind of the big frame?
The unfair advantage there have, but the impact of that and what it's leading to, and how failing to educate voters about that allows for people to think, well, the Republicans are just as bad as the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans. So if I'm a Republican, I'm voting Republican. That kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would step back and say, it's hard without getting too much into the weeds. One, the Supreme Court has decided to hear this case that you've talked about called Moore v. Harper. Two, it's quite possible that the Supreme Court will rule in such a way that would allow state legislatures to ignore their own state Supreme Court when it comes to establishing maps for voting, right? And when it even and thereby tilting federal elections specifically, because that's what we're talking about for Congress, those as opposed to the Electoral College. This is just about Congress. That the Supreme Court's likely to rule in such a way to make it permanently easier for Republican-dominated state legislatures to get Republicans into federal office. That's the picture. However, what's much more important is that the part of the U.S. Constitution they're looking for allows Congress to act to fix that. That's the most important thing. So the bottom line is we need a Senate and a House who will fix that problem. And that's not the only one. And to me, the most important thing is to get across is that a lot of what legislating is super in the weeds, but members of Congress have and can have the best advisors on staff, and we need them to do it. For example, if you ask me something about the Texas electrical grid, I were an electrician, I don't think you would want me to go up and tell you the exact how we wheel out the electricity here and why this house isn't. What you want to know is what the fuck did they do in the Texas government to hand this over to people who can't keep the power on? Right. And the answer is don't vote for these bozos. So similarly, when you ask me a legal question, I'm like, part of me is turning my legal engineering hat on. But what you really want to know is that this isn't the fucking end of the world if Congress would do something about it. And the only way they're going to do something about it is if we get 2 more seats in the Senate. And we need, so I mean, that's it. And this isn't the only example. There's one after another, after another, after another. Yeah. And so the answer to me is the only way to tilt the balance of power is back to the message. The Republicans they're anti-freedom. They want this to be they are trying to, it's not even bread and circus with them. What they're offering is monster truck rallies and, reality TV shows and pro wrestling. And that's not what government is.
And white privilege. But
they're trying to, it's like song and dance. And then behind the curtains, freedom is being stolen from us. And why is freedom being stolen from us? The people at the top, the Donalds of the world, they don't give a shit about the integrity of the family or being married once or how many abortions anyone they know has. They want the levers of power so they can enrich their friends. Mm-hmm. So this is about, just like we said, the business of news, of the big news media is business. The business of Republican government is business and stripping your freedom away so they can take your money away. That's what the Republicans are doing. They're not coming up with tax cuts.
One quick thing.
Yeah, right. Go ahead.
One quick thing about that. What makes this so difficult to overcome? Yale did a study in 2020 that showed that only 3.5% of voters would vote against someone in their party because they acted in undemocratic ways. 3.5%. Right? That is it. So people are driven by negative partisanship. They're driven by being a part of their tribe. They're driven by, they don't want to face the hard integrity, democracy, what's the right thing to do questions, because then they have to examine their own lives. And a lot of people are hypocrites and they don't want to self-reflect and realize that if I apply that standard to others, and I better live by it too. So there's a lot going on sociologically in our country that contributes to this. And those of us who have been willing to step out and call it out, we are in the minority here, but the good thing is that at least we have platforms. Thank God that we don't have to rely on traditional media as much anymore. And plus, traditional media is losing confidence through the American people anyway. They're not confident in that. Right. And lots of money. And unfortunately, local newspapers and things like that are going away too, which is a shame because a lot of people get their information from local news. So there's a lot going on here, but every one of us plays a role because we can use our platforms, to Dean's point, where we are able to talk to each other, because the only way you're going to see any kind of immediate change is people talking to other people and then seeing how it affects their lives. Unfortunately, it's selfish. If it doesn't affect me, then I don't care. What is this democracy thing? I don't even know what the Constitution says. Who's my congressman? I don't know. But when you start saying, this is what Republicans are doing to you, they're taking away, they're forcing 10-year-olds who are raped to have babies and prosecuting doctors who try to help them. Like when they go, oh, oh, like if we don't start putting it in terms that were like, as Michael Smerconish says, BLT terms, you need to break it down so the average person understands how it affects them. And until then, until people get that sense of urgency or pay enough of a price, they don't change. Meanwhile, we continue the fight.
Mary, I know
Right.
we gotta get Kurt in. Can I
Yeah,
give a
we
one
do.
line on Moore v. Harper? Just if
Sure.
you just a quick BLT line. If the Supreme Court votes in favor of the Republican in Moore v. Harper,
They will.
Republicans have 30 of the 50 state legislatures, and specifically, they are controlling the 7 battleground states, which means that for the 2024 election, for the people who are watching, the Republican state legislature can reject the votes of the people and put in their fake slate of electors who will then give the election to the Republican, even if even if DeSantis or Trump lose the popular vote and the electoral college votes, they could say, nope, the Supreme Court said that we and we alone have the power to decide federal elections, and we're going to reject these electors because of voting fraud, and we're going to put in our Republican electors, and that's a coup. There you go.
Need proof.
Wait,
they can just make it up.
But
yep.
But there, we're also 4 state they are 4 state legislatures away from being able to call a constitutional convention.
Yep.
At which that's the last nail. Kurt, I want to sort of encapsulate both what Jen and Tara were talking about in terms of what, informing people about what is really going on, and that shockingly, there are more important things than inflation and gas prices. And by the way, those are 2 things nobody can do anything about anyway, really. But what can be done and what can't be done, like we need people to have realistic expectations. And I think that's part of what gets lost. On the one hand, they don't get accurate information about what Republicans are doing and what the consequences of that are. But on the other side, they, a lot of voters seem to think, well, why doesn't Biden just wave his wand? And I don't understand why Democrats have the majority. Why haven't they fixed everything? Right. So what do we do about that?
Well, I think part of it has to do with focus, right? I wrote a piece for USA Today this week expressing my annoyance with Democratic activists who think that protesting in front of the White House or protesting in front of the White House Chief of Staff's house is a productive use of their time, energy, resources, and manpower, when in reality, Joe Biden is not your enemy. He is not your adversary. He is not the cause of these things that are going on in our country. The Republican Party is. You know what you don't see in the months leading up to an election? You don't see Republicans protesting their own candidates. That just doesn't happen in the Republican Party. Whatever inter-party squabbles we might have, they are set aside in the run-up to the election because they understand that winning is all that matters. Democrats need to figure that out. They need to understand that the perfect cannot be the enemy of the good, and that if you really want the things done that you talk about, the policies on whether it's guns, climate, economy, taxation, inequality, social justice, you have to get more Democrats elected to office. Protesting fellow Democrats isn't going to help you achieve those means. You might as well be doing Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell's job for them if you think that spending your activist energy attacking your own party is the recipe to success, is the recipe towards electoral success. That's what kind of drives me nuts. All the while, to the broader theme of what this panel has been about, we have such an inherent structural disadvantage when you consider that the other side has a never-ending cadre of propaganda vehicles that they have strategically invested in and built over the years, whether it's Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire, whether it's Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, whether it's what's happened to Fox News, OANN, Newsmax, etc. We have very little equivalent to that in terms of scale. The most successful digital messaging operation that I have seen over the last 4 years was frankly done by the Lincoln Project. And when they launched something called LPTV, the amount of eyeballs that they would get would at times dwarf CNN. And the reason why that was the case is there's clearly an audience and an appetite from our side, our perspective, to see something like that presented in a television streaming format. I was once asked, I'm an advisor to DNC, full disclosure. I was once asked by a very major donor, what's the one thing you would say that we need to do as a party? My answer without blinking was, you need to get you and every one of your millionaires and billionaires to invest in a media-esque company that can offset and combat what we see on the other side. We are fighting this fight with one hand tied behind our back. Their side, all they hear is they're great. Everything they do is the greatest thing of all time, and everything Democrats do is evil, terrible, socialist, end of the world. What our side hears is, well, the other guys are bad, but here's how our side's letting you down. Here's how our side is blowing it. Like, well, how in the world are we supposed to compete when that's what we get from our media ecosystem?
I'm only
Thank you,
laughing
Kurt.
because otherwise I'd be sobbing. So
I just want to say thank you, Kurt. I appreciate the shout out. Obviously,
Yeah,
I'm very
and
proud of what we've done over at LP. And just an example, recent in real time right now. Yesterday, we at the Lincoln Project put out a pro-Biden ad that was, showing that, yep, some things have been kind of shitty. Most of that's not his fault, but here are all the great things that have actually happened that are going on. And, Biden as a leader, the leader now, is stepping up to the plate to try to help keep our democracy together. And there's jobs and there's this and that. And I mean, it was a hero ad pro Biden.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Democrats. Where are you guys? Like,
Well,
instead they're arguing about the Senate. Not you guys. I mean, in
No, I know.
Mary,
I know.
can I give you one
but instead they're arguing over this, whether Biden is physically able to run again. What's happening to Kamala Harris?
Right.
Don't get me
Why
started.
are
We're
we
going to
doing
talk
this
about
now?
that. We're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks. So
Mary, can I give you one
Believe
quick
me,
data
as former
point?
Republicans, we know how to message.
Yeah,
right,
exactly. But hang on, Dean. I just want to say something really quickly about, how to protest. I don't know if you guys heard this, but 2 climate catastrophe activists glued their hands to Botticelli's Primavera, which accomplished one thing. It made people hate climate activists. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, yes, let's destroy art in the service of what exactly? So anyway, we have to learn how to protest too.
I have no answer to this, but there's a really important data point. Everyone here knows the poll, the generic congressional ballot poll. Who are you going to vote for today if the election was for Congress? In 2018, at this very point, when Joe Biden and Donald Trump had the same approval ratings now as they had the same, Democrats had an 8-point lead. If you look at the 538 or Real Clear Politics, 8 point. What is the Republican lead right now? 1 point. So Americans are paying attention. Despite Democrats' muddled messaging and what we do, we attack each other. We just need a little help to get over the line there to get people out. Because I think people understand more instinctively. And overturning Roe was a big thing. Forcing a 10-year-old to have a child, the rapist, is barbaric. And if that's your religion, get another religion, to be blunt. But I think people get the extremism out there. And I think it's up to us to come up with messages individually, collectively, with Democratic leaders. Because they see the extremism. They see them banning books, banning abortion, banning transgender rights, banning next coming from Who You Can Love Again. We're going backwards in time to banning Black history being taught. None of that's an exaggeration. That's literally what's going on. So I don't know the answer. We struggle on my show. How just to amplify this, because we're there. We're 1 point. And yes, I understand we really have to be 3 or 4 points up in the real world, but we're on the right path, and we've done nothing in terms of messaging in the right way.
Can I give an answer to this quickly?
Hold on, Brian, and then Cliff.
Yeah, look, you talk about, and Kurt and Cliff, and you're talking about a media-esque type company. You know what would really work? Just a media company that gave you the facts, because I got news for you. The Democrats have the facts on their side.
Yep.
The problem is that we don't portray the facts factually, and the Democrats are really poor about coming out and doing the messaging themselves, which is why I don't understand why members of Congress are out protesting about legislation when they have the means at their disposal to pass the legislation. To me, that's kind of silly. Some of the things that the Democrats do are counterproductive to what would actually be better for the country and for themselves. And instead of fighting each other all the time, a united message from the Democrats would help make a more united front in what exists in the media today. But bottom line, Dean, to your point, if the Democrats want to, you have to sit back and look and go, what more do the Republicans have to do for the Democrats to win overwhelmingly? I mean, we have what?
Maybe if we sink into the ocean.
Wait a second, though. But again, we're devolving again into it's all the fucking Democrats' fault. No, the Democrats have the facts on their side. They have, 70% of Americans agree with practically all of their policies, and yet it's not that. Listen, if it were a level playing field, we wouldn't have to have this conversation. We would not. There's gerrymandering, there's voter suppression, there's voter subversion, there's right-wing media ecosystem, there's the mainstream media failing daily at its job. This is not a level playing field. So let's concede that Democrats aren't perfect, because, to which I say, and what exactly are Republicans doing? They are basically pro-fascist at this point. So, let's focus on what do we do about the fact that we start out, despite the fact that we are pro-democracy, we're pro-humanity, we're pro-civil rights, we're pro, women's rights, etc., pro-equality, all that stuff. We still start with both hands behind our backs.
So can I just jump?
Yeah,
I mean, look, we may have there's the beginnings in in some ways of a solution right here, okay, which is we're not going to build this media infrastructure in a few months, right? And we're not going to be able to put all this together. But the truth is, right now, we haven't sort of hacked the system in the way the right has. I mean, look at everybody who's sitting here on this panel, right? Who have multiple ways of getting messages out, who have huge followings on Twitter, and every journalist is on Twitter, and they're as vulnerable to repeating stuff they see multiple times as anybody else. The truth of the matter is that, and I'm not saying to everybody here we should become automatrons like the right. It's not going to happen, right? But if I started tweeting out just the other week, and I think I forgot this week, so I need to get on it every day, something along the lines of they want to make 10-year-old girls, force them to have children when they're raped. They want to, put guns in the hands of the Highland Park shooters. They want to, and we let these things go away because we don't have that media infrastructure that keeps repeating them, right? Well, right here among us, when you look at podcasts, you look at every day, the amount of people that could be reached if all of us were on message, so to speak, and tweeting these things out and reminding people. Journalists would see it, activists would see it, and it is a way right now with the challenges we have. It's not perfect, but I feel like it's the best we got.
It's a start.
30, like a minute. Because I just want to ask you a question. Okay, so we basically have this situation where the right has so many structural advantage and other advantages. Do you think that has increased the extremism on the right because they don't have to appeal to anybody outside of this very narrow group?
No, absolutely. I think it's become just such a strong echo chamber that I don't think there's any. I mean, like, there were guardrails maybe along the way. I don't think there are really any. That's actually my concern about what happens in 2024 and actually even after the midterms. I'm just really concerned because it's going to become loyalist serving loyalist, so to speak. And that is when it becomes very dangerous, where, it was already dangerous. But I would say that there were different voices in the room who at least we tried to kind of take a stand and try to figure out how to navigate in difficult situations. I think going forward, you're going to see that it will be loyalists supporting loyalists, and it's going to be more extreme. And I mean, you're seeing that now in a lot of the messaging, you're seeing in the ads. I mean, there's so many Republican ads out there. Unfortunately, they're, guns, Jesus, and who knows what else. I mean, that's what they focus on.
Babies.
And that's what they're touting. Yeah. And
basically a country music song.
See that I know it. Yeah.
It's quite a trifecta.
I think I think all of the grievances, all of the anger, there's been talk about revenge against those of us that have really been supportive of the January 6th Select Committee's work because it matters, because we care about the rule of law, we care about justice, we care about accountability, and there's been talk about what it will be like in the future should they gain power after the midterms, and how Congress will behave toward each other and those that took a stand, or even other people that were vocal about it. So I think I do think that's what's causing a lot of the greater divide, and I think they're taking advantage of it. Right, the more extreme they get, the more popular they get.
Right,
and I
it's
think
working
that's
for them.
So dangerous.
And they, again, because they need such a minority, a small minority of people voting because of the system, they can. Hate is working for them, right, Tara?
And they're very well organized. In my final comments before I have to jump, but I just want to say two things. Donald Trump is in Washington, D.C. today, speaking at one of his America First Policy Institute bullshit.
Policy.
Right, please. Bullshit depot for the rejects from his past administration who couldn't get jobs. But guess how much money they have? They've got $25 million and 150 people on staff.
Yeah,
they are very well funded
this morning.
Right. They're very well funded. They're very well organized, and they're dedicated. It's like terrorists. They have a religion and they're dedicated to it. And they think that if, that they sacrifice themselves and do whatever they need to do to reach their goal. And for these people, they have nothing else. So never underestimate the will and the commitment of the enemy, because when we are sleeping, they're not. When we're arguing and, circular firing squad with each other, they are marching lockstep forward with their objective. So it's really important that lots of folks get their heads out of their asses and realize that we are losing time here, and that we've got to stop arguing over points and picas and this $1 billion or this $1 trillion or this regulation or that regulation, because none of that shit's going to matter if the democracy goes under. One focus is voting people into office who are pro-democracy or they're not. Either they believe in the Constitution and the rule of law or they don't. And right now, the Republican Party does not.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. And I would only add, before we get to our final segment, that part of the problem here is that we take democracy for granted. And I think many people, probably the vast majority of people in this country, have never had to think about what democracy means, what it means to them, what it means in their lives. So they focus. And in some cases, very understandably, because when you live in a society that is completely organized around the economy and economic success or failure, then it's hard to think about anything else when you're struggling financially, right? So, that's a conversation I absolutely want to have for another time. Anybody who could stay, I would love to. We like to kick back at the end. Bye, Tara. We will see you soon. Thank you. Bye, Kurt. Bye, Olivia.
Kurt's too.
I think Kurt is threatening to go into the pool, which is not fair. But
Kurt, there, Kurt.
Well, see, there he goes.
He already jumped in the pool.
Swimming is more important to him.
We argue about Reagan again now?
Yeah.
Okay, Reagan is evil.
Yes.
Terrible.
Everything.
Yes.
I think Reagan was one of the worst presidents in the history of this country, with the exception of Donald and George W. Bush.
And the crazies from the people in his administration and Reagan's, who they called the crazies, which they did, Pat Buchanan, Lynn Nossinger, some of the other ones, they are the direct descendants, Donald Trump and these guys now. He elevated people, so.
How about that one little producer that he elevated in his...
Roger somebody or other?
Yeah, Roger. That
starts with an A?
Remember him? He's
Roger
the one that brought...
Okay,
Can we talk about this? The cable would rather book, instead of progressives, former Republicans, how they love that? Because they're not here anymore on the panel now. I like them all, but they'd rather have instead of having a real progressive, they'd rather have a former Republican on.
Well, listen, we don't know that, and honestly,
we know that.
Okay, we do know that. But I
love them. It's not about that. It's the bookers. It's not their fault.
I look forward to the day when all of us and Tara and Olivia can fight over policy. But we're not there yet. So we are all pro-democracy, and that's really all that matters at this point. Yeah. And on that note, I'd like to take a step back and ask all of you, because I swear to God, every week feels. I was trying to think about last week's hearing, and I'm not kidding. I thought that last week's hearing was 3 weeks ago. It's like, wow, it's been a really long time since it's been 4 days, 5 days, whatever. So, what are you doing to de-stress, or what's helping you, whether it's stay sane or just decompress or find a little joy, because it's unceasing, and like Tara said, we can't take our foot off of the gas at all. But we do have to stay healthy enough to fight. So, Dean, what are you doing?
I was supposed to be on vacation this week.
I know. He's like, I'm so sorry. Your vacation
on
got
vacation.
canceled.
I was supposed to be in the Middle East, but my fiance got COVID 4 hours before the flight. But she was already in the Middle East visiting her family in Haifa. So,
what do you hear that part?
So she goes, she had a fever. So I'm doing a staycation. I'm chatting with you guys, which is bringing some sanity. It really does. I mean, for me, honestly enough, that's not. But the fact I do a radio show 3 hours a night and talk to people in the Democratic base, we lift each other's spirits. I mean, and I hate to sound like a cheerleader, but I feel like that's my role. But it's organic. It's sincere. Mm-hmm. I really believe the truth is when we come out big, we win big. It's backed up in 2017 in Virginia and Jersey, 2018 for the House, 2020. We can do that again in 2022. And it's about, Kurt was saying some of these protesters aren't doing the right thing. I understand strategically, but you want people engaged. You want their energy. I'd rather they get involved and maybe we can get them to vote than not get engaged. So to me, I just read a lot and chat email Mary and go on Twitter and try to take a breath every now and then, take a step back and not listen to the news. But we're 105 days out. There's no time to check out. It's time to check in and step up. We have to save it. It's up to us. It's this simple. This is it. We're doing this from another country.
Right. And that's why we need to find things here and there, because we can't be focused 24 hours a day, right, Waj? We need something to, even if we can't take our minds off of it entirely, at least refocus.
Yeah. So coincidentally, yesterday I was just thinking about the future of our country, which I often do, and the state of democracy. I'm not a masochist. I think it's one of the situations when you have the awareness and you can connect the dots, and you're lucky and privileged like us that we either do this as a living or we have the time to invest in it. Oftentimes we feel like like the brown Cassandra, like you see it, it's like Don't Look Up. You see the comet. And exactly what you said is, and you feel this type of pain and exasperation that your fellow countrymen and folks just don't care or are tapped out, and that can be very demoralizing. And so I'm not a Pollyanna-ish person, but I'm also not a cynic, and I'm a realist. And so I was thinking about it. I'm like, realistically, and I hope I'm wrong, things can change. I'm like, we're in a tough place for 10 years, even if Democrats win, right? Because the other side, those forces are radicalized and mobilized, and thanks to the right-wing media ecosystem, we've lost about a third of our fellow Americans, at least from my lifetime. I think they live on Earth 3. They're not evil. They're not devils. They believe we're all pedophiles who worship Satan and are coming after the children. And I think that's going to be the case for the next 20 years. And a part of me says, okay, if this is Star Wars, maybe we're in Empire Strikes Back, the second one. And if you guys haven't seen the trilogy, that's when things are really bleak. And that's when like Darth Vader comes back and they're hiding out on the Hoth base and it's like they're frozen. They're just trying to survive. And I hate quoting Churchill because he was a racist, but he had some good gems. During World War II, right? When it seems all was lost, he said survival is victory. And I feel like it's one of those situations where I was thinking about my mindset. I'm like, it's easy to give up, but I have 3 kids. Yeah. And the story's still being written. It isn't over yet. And what's my role in this story, right? And so my role in this story is perhaps to keep fighting and keep this going, because we don't know what the next page is going to turn. We don't know what the story is going to be. And then for my kids' generation, maybe they can inherit this better version of America that we fought for. Yeah. And so that's what keeps me going. And then also, I think it's very important, like I've said this before on your show, I'm not interested in martyrs. I think especially on the left, like that's been a sign of success. Look, I died for everyone. Look how many arrows I have in my chest, right? And I'm like, yo, I want you to live like a long, healthy life, first and foremost, because I need more from you, like to extract like your superhero talent. But also, I want to create a narrative for our children. They're like, oh, look, that person, my dad, my Baba, he worked hard. He took on these fascists, but he was also happy and he was a good Baba and he was invested. And so what I try to do is I take those breaks every day. Watch it. I watch the Netflix that I want to watch. I build a Lego set for my kids. I go work out now with the gym with a mask on. I'm trying to lose my COVID weight, and I make sure every day that I set aside some time for my kids and just to play, just for the sake of playing. Mm-hmm. And then that restores me spiritually and emotionally to get back into the fight. And I think that's very important for people, because if you're tapping out now, if you're depressed, if you're exasperated, you are not helping yourself, you're not helping your family, and you're not helping this movement against fascism. Right. I need you in the long run.
Yeah. And that's, part of why I like to ask you guys what you're doing to stay in the fight without burning out, because we all do need to be in this for the long haul. And you're right. It's not 2022 or 2024. It's at least another decade if we win. and then the fight looks completely different if we don't. But it's fascinating. Like, every time we do this, I'm literally just like, "Hey, what kind of Lego set you building, or what are you watching on Netflix?" And then Waj always like gives us this mic drop of an eloquent speech that's very difficult to follow. So thanks, Waj. No, but seriously, it everything you said is absolutely something people need to take to heart, and because it also reminds us that we do need each other. We are not doing this in isolation, despite the fact that I don't know, Cliff. You just had COVID. I still, sorry, did I violate your HIPAA?
I think I said
Sorry.
publicly that on Twitter and many places. So you didn't.
Well, I can't violate your HIPAA rights anyway. Like, so there you go.
Sucks. So like, I don't even. I tested negative a few times, even though my son tested positive. So I don't even know if I had it. I know I didn't feel great.
Yeah,
I
you
know
probably
he
did.
had it. So I'm assuming I did. But if you're jumping into what I do, I kind of feel like there's the and don't tell anybody this because I try to act like a mean guy. But there's like the cuddly things you do. There's the stupid things you do. For me, the cuddly things are I have two boys that I adore. And even though the 15-year-old is like a rock star drummer now, whatever, I don't care. He has to hug me. But no, I mean, they're such sweet boys. They're awesome. And I find time for them, as Waj was saying, every day. I'm listening to hair metal. I mean, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, before all this, is probably where I got COVID, even though we were masked. We went to like see bands like Skid Row and like Motley Crue. That's right. We're 1980s. And my younger kid is a huge sports fan, and I grew up in New York, as I said. So, big Yankees fan, and the Yankees came out here and played the Guardians. God, kick me off this.
Bye. You're muted.
And came out. That was awful. And they played
They were called that for like 8 decades, so
I know,
it's an
I know.
understandable.
They played the Pirates too. I'm sure that's somehow not.
I was more worried about the Motley Crue reference, but hey.
Okay, it's all good. And so I went on the, so doing stuff with my kids and just hanging out with them, and my wife is awesome. And so there's that. Oh, and let's not forget the 4 cats. One of them was behind me up before. Yeah, we have 4 of them because we're crazy, but they're adorable. I love them and whatever. So there's that. The stupid stuff. Was it Beater? What's his name? Beater, Daedric, whatever the dude's name is.
Bader.
Thank you. I'm getting mixed up. Who was asking on Twitter the other day, like, what's a dumb action movie that I can watch? And I'm like, oh, let me talk to you. Stupid action movies where stuff blows up. Let me relax. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't have to think. The good guys always win.
Hudson Hawk.
There you go. Stuff like that. So I do some of that. And then, like I would say the final thing is just, and the stuff you would all do, like I go to the gym and do karate and whatever. And the final thing is honestly, like the YouTube channel I started where I really like go after Republicans and point out their hypocrisies and do those things. Like that's cathartic for me. Like, I mean, it's not just something I'm doing to promote whatever and get out there. I have to do it. If I didn't, I would explain. And honestly, doing that, I mean, I take time off when I need to. So, whatever works for people, with some combination, I think of the like, being able to sort of chill with an animal is a great thing. Being able to like do something stupid. And then sometimes, even the work we do can be a way you relax. So
yeah,
that's the best thing
absolutely.
I got. Nothing as cool as what Waj said. I don't have a big speech.
Well, who can be as cool as Waj? I don't know.
Fair enough.
I'm going to use that blurb.
Okay. Gene, you want to try? No, I'm kidding.
I went already. Didn't I do my thing?
Yeah, you did it.
I'm so sorry. I started with you.
You started with me.
I haven't had COVID, but I'm telling you, I have COVID brain. I'm not kidding. I think it's from
okay.
Well, actually, as I've said before, I've been in isolation since November 9th, 2016. So, I'm not kidding. It really takes its fucking toll.
Don't mean to laugh.
Not quite the same way. Sorry. Brian.
Well, let's see. I'm officially an old fart here. Waj, the first date with my wife that we went to was Empire Strikes Back. That's
wow. You're like 800 years old, man. That's amazing.
Yeah,
You've aged so well.
I can't even count that high.
You and Methuselah hang out?
And you still have your hair in your head. You're like a
little bit of it
Adonis.
Anyway. But I like the no martyrs thing too. That takes me back to the movie Pat. No bastard ever won a war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard. I kind of like that idea. But seriously and comically, my 3-year-old grandson. I don't have any more mountains to climb. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. I just want a safe environment from my grandson when he grows up, because the things that I enjoy and have been able to take advantage of in this country, I want for all the children, especially my grandchildren. I want a future for the United States of America that's a democratic nation, not one that's an authoritarian, Hitler-esque aristocracy, or a theocracy, even worse. The biggest problem in our country today is and I'm saying this as a Catholic raised in a Catholic environment. The biggest problem are those 6 conservative Catholics on the Supreme Court. They will destroy the United States, and they believe that the only thing that stands in the way between righteousness are all of those of us, the majority, who don't believe as they do. So to keep my head straight, I look at my grandson and I put one foot in front of the other each day, do my job, write my column, try to point out the bullshit when I see it. I got to go cover Donald Trump today, and it's making me ill. I'm tingling in my seat thinking about it. Then comically, I guess it's going to be hallucinogens, bourbon, rock and roll, and comedy. Those will keep me in my gardening. But that
all at the same time? That sounds dangerous.
Some garden.
So, and
I would pay money to see a high Brian garden.
Some magic mushroom.
Also drunk on bourbon.
More likely to see him sober garden. Isn't it great though, Brian? The 6 Supreme Court justices are going to help Republicans and democracy. They'll end up just being 6 people in a robe. That's all they're going to end up being. That's what they're doing. They're destroying democracy. The court means nothing, and they're just people wandering around in a robe in the future.
That's all they're. And I don't want to know what they're doing underneath their robe. And when they waving their magic wands, I don't want to know that.
You know what Long Dong Thomas was doing. So.
Yeah.
All right then, Jen.
So, wait a minute.
Let's stop this madness.
The last one, I'd just say.
Okay.
Being here with you guys.
Is this a locker room?
Locker room? Yeah.
Locker room
talk. I know it was Long Dong Silver. I apologize. It wasn't me.
All right, Jen.
Himself.
Okay, so I guess 3 things. One, on Facebook, they have these sites or these groups called Buy Nothing. I don't know if you know these. There's one in my area. And so if you have something you're cleaning out your house, you don't need some old IKEA bookshelves, or someone else has a sled, or the Chaise Lounge I got for free, you post it on this Buy Nothing site. And so I've really gotten into that, because when I needed stuff for my office, I found something free. And when we needed to move some stuff out of my kids' room, and I really like the idea of giving away stuff for free and exchanging stuff for free. It gets your sort of acquisitive side satisfied without having to, spend money, and also helping others.
I love that.
It's good. The second thing is I'm trying to be a better mom. And so I let my 15-year-old get a snake that I kind of like.
That's being a good mom?
Snakes are awesome. They really are.
Snake. And then my husband, being an overachiever artist, actually built a vivarium out of this gorgeous, Michael.
Of course he did.
And another thing I'm trying to do, the third thing is I'm trying to be a better spouse. When Michael and I were dating, I assured him, I said, I'm not like other women. I'm not going to take up your time. I don't want to spend any time with you. I got my own shit to do. He always jokes. He was like, I thought you were
proposal
pitch.
He thought I was joking, but now it's the big joke is on him, because for the last 5 years he's been trying to get me to ever talk to him, and so we used to we finally because shut up, Mary. I hope he's not watching now, but because I'm busy, and it's he's nice, I like him, but I've got stuff to do, and so now I actually start to really during COVID I start to really like him a lot, and so every morning we have coffee together. He's a lovely person, but I'm really that he's the goal in the relationship.
You're a tough room.
No, he's a wonderful guy.
So you're only finally get to go know your husband now. This is nice.
No, but I don't
you have things in common?
Women have to process stuff.
Yeah.
Guys, women want to process stuff. I'm I want to talk about the news at dinner. People have to talk about your feelings to me. So I've learned to be more human. So that's what I've done. Yeah, that's been fun.
But Jen, to Jen's point, I've learned more about my fiance I lived with for years. During COVID, I realized she's not just my best friend; she's my only friend. I have no friends. No one cared about me.
Wait a minute.
I swear to God, I have maybe Mary, but Mary's not.
Right.
Sorry, but
I've been married for close to 2 years. We don't want to be around each other all the time.
Dean has been coming at me the last couple of weeks.
I have
I'm not sure what's
acquaintances.
going on.
I like you, Dean. You're nice.
We love you, Dean.
It's not. You're not real friends, okay? You're not real friends. if I hit a move, you're not helping. Okay, so
I'll help you move. I just
Okay,
want you to
just
check.
want to make an announcement. There may be an opening in the Nerd Avengers soon if this continues.
What? Was something I said?
No, Dean, it's like you're not my friend.
No, you know what I mean. I mean, like close friends. Like anyone email me how you doing during COVID. It's me, her, and the plants. If she goes, that's all I got are plants. Okay, I don't got kids. I don't got a pet.
Well, do the
It's
plants
me,
know
her,
how
and
you doing?
plants.
Get a pet.
man.
Get a pet. Get a cat.
They're the best.
Cats are the best.
I'm
No,
not
but
here.
I'll help
can-
you move.
Like,
Thank
Dean,
you.
I
Not
totally.
fucking up. It's not all right. Forget it. I got it.
No, I totally understand because it's a very long story, but I basically got completely isolated during COVID, and it definitely changes, how you relate to people. It's tricky, but we are here for you, whether you like it or not.
Right.
So
I prefer to be alone. Actually,
I'm just gonna get Dean another plant.
I know. I've got fake plants behind me. I got they're not even real.
Can you make edibles out of them?
Okay, well,
I was plant in the living room that's alive.
I was going to start by saying that hanging out with you guys really helps, and now I'm not so sure. But,
Well, everybody but Dean. So that's
up until recently, no, seriously, this is. I look forward to this a lot, and I don't know, maybe that says something about me. I'm not really sure, but no, I seriously, it helps tremendously. And other than that, though, I'm reading this book called Breathe by Jason Nestor, I think his name is, because I've had asthma forever, and I'm trying to get in shape again, and breathing is something that doesn't come easily to me. So and I think it's incredible. It obviously it's the most important thing we do.
Everybody needs to breathe.
And yet, like human beings are terrible at it. It's kind of fascinating how that happens. But so I'm reading that, and I'm detoxing. I'm on this very strict detox right now. It's been 7 days.
Congrats.
So I'm gonna keep that up, and so far so good. But I think it's a sign of just how toxic I was that I still don't feel great.
I think it's because you're in a box next to Brian, and he is so full of stuff.
Well, it's like
Brian's
those
enough for both of you.
hallucinogenics are just
you get a buzz just hanging out near Brian. You're in the
drink
same
so much
Zoom as
bourbon,
Brian. You get
and
hot.
then it floats over to the box you're in.
Right, you're in contact high from Zoom with Brian.
But Mary, when it comes to breathing, right? Like, don't underestimate it. I feel like even those who are watching, oftentimes moments of stress and panic, and we feel besieged, right, for the past 3 years, especially during the pandemic.
Yes.
Literally, human beings forget to breathe. It's like fight, flight. And so the practice of breathing, it allows you to relax. It allows you to stay in the moment. It allows you to, like, your brain starts functioning at like a rational level again, and it allows for gratitude and happiness.
And I say also, it will ease. I learned it from the karate that I take with my older son, and just in through the nose and a big out through the mouth. You do when you get really anxious. A couple of those, I swear to you, will work. I mean, I'm not saying all anxiety goes away if it's a big moment or whatever, but it will calm you.
But like Roger was saying, if you turn it into a practice too, and I used to do Taekwondo, and you're right, Cliff. It's incredibly. It's amazing how much more powerful you are when you use your breathing properly. So part of that too is just I think Cliff and I are just putting people on notice that we can kick your asses if necessary.
Correct.
But we won't.
Make me sweep the leg because I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'm half Sicilian. I'll pay someone to sweep it. I won't do it myself.
I'm Lebanese. I'll buy the Sicilian.
Oh my God. All right. On that note, stop buying people.
Right.
It was so great to see you, my Nerd Avengers. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, thank you all.
Wajahad Dino Badala, Kurt Bardella, Tara Setmeyer, Olivia Troy. Thank you so much. We'll see you all soon. Stay safe. Mwah.
You too. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much to my Nerd Avengers and our special guests, Tara Setmeyer and Olivia Troy. And thank all of you for joining us today and for all of your great comments. I just wanted to jump in and let you know that this coming Thursday, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific at youtube.com/Politicon, we'll have our regular show with my guest, Tim O'Brien. That is not to be missed. And of course, next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, youtube.com/Politicon. We will have our next strategy session with the Nerd Adventures and special guests to be decided. Also, while you're at youtube.com/Politicon, please subscribe to the Politicon channel. It's free. Like the episode. And if you click on that bell, you will be alerted every time a new episode drops. In between episodes, I've been doing a bunch of short videos, varying really short, from like 45 seconds up to 15 minutes. So check those out too. That's sort of my way of trying to stay on top of the kind of unceasing news cycle. And of course, you can listen to the podcast at Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen. And if you're on Apple, please do give the show a 5-star rating. It really does help other people find the show. And, part of what we talked about today was how important it is for Democrats and pro-democracy people to find ways to get the message out to help us make up for the really dangerous deficits in the mainstream media. So that is it for today. Thank you again so much for being here. I will see all of you on Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. In the meantime, please stay safe and be kind.
Thank you.